You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javan Okello, live from Seattle, Washington, USA. Thank you so much for joining us for today's daily African Proverbs. My name is Simon Javan Okello, and I am in Seattle, Washington. And I have a special guest today with me is Gogo Rutendo Ngara. And Gogo Rutendo Ngara is an evolved spiritual leader joining me from South Africa. And, we're going to learn a little more about Gogo today. If you are joining us for the first time today, typically every Thursday, Gogo is my special guest here for the African Father in America podcast. And today we are going to talk about a couple of things. First, we are going to dissect a Mauritius proverb that says, what you lose in the fire, you will find in ashes. What you lose in the fire, you will find in ashes. We are going to dissect this proverb and learn a little bit about it. We are also going to learn about what Credo Mutua would say about this proverb. And then we will learn a lot of, some of the current projects that Gogo Rutendo Ngara is working on, and how you can all be involved, how you can all support. So we do this 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Monday to Friday. We are currently live streaming on Clubhouse and also on YouTube. So join us. Feel free to share the link to the room. And I want to invite you, Gogo, to just say hello, maybe say a little more about yourself if there's anything that I missed, and then share what your thoughts are in regards to this proverb. What you lose in the fire, you will find in ashes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Simon. It's such a pleasure to be back after Africa Day, which is such an incredible marathon that you ran. And I'm so appreciative of the work that you do and what you put together in celebrating our wonderful continent, our complex and wonderful continent. As you said, my name is Rutendo. And when I first saw this proverb, the immediate thing that came to mind is I think I've mentioned at some point that I do martial arts, and the immediate thing that came to mind is my martial arts name, which is Fengxian, and which means immortal phoenix. And so that was the immediate thing that came to mind. So if you wanted to know something about me that you didn't know, that is it today. But I felt that this proverb is an invitation to play with fire. And, we're often told that playing with fire means that we're living on the edge or living dangerously. But what does fire from our indigenous wisdom? And we often speak of 4 core elements in our manifested reality. We speak about earth, air, fire, and water. Earth and air dance the dance of duality. One is gross matter, and the other one is it's tangible and it's manifest, while the other is a lot more ephemeral. Similarly, fire and water dance in opposition to each other. One cools, one warms, one floods and can lead to drowning. The other can burn and scorch, rendering all. But apart from their moderate manifestations to keep life in its various forms in balance and creation, each one of these elements can actually lead to destruction. The earth can quake, the air can form hurricanes and cyclones, tsunamis may rise from the ocean bed, or volcanoes may spurt forth lava from the belly of the earth in an eruption. But what this tells us is that in nature, nothing is innately good or bad. Each has their creative and destructive qualities. Each has their positive and negative aspects. All is relational, and we are in the midst of an indivisible duality. Everything is an aspect of what we here in the Bantu land call Untu. This is the consciousness that pervades through existence. And if we take as a premise that existence is made of consciousnesses and will as its essence, and energy and matter as its manifestation, then this implies that nature's way is one of flux. Nature is one of potential for transformation, one of constant potential for restoration, one of constant potential for regeneration. So things can transform, states can restore, situations can regenerate. And this, for me, is the core of what today's proverb, speaks to me. What you lose in the fire, you'll find in the ashes. At the end of the day, there is no loss, is my takeaway from the proverb today. You had asked me something about Credo Motor, and so I thought, let me just start by reading from the prologue of his tome, or his life's work, Indaba My Children. And I'm just going to read the prologue because it might tell us a little bit about fire. And he says, there are stories that old men and old women tell to boys and girls seated with open mouths around the spark-wreathed fires in the center of the villages, in the dark forests, and on the aloe-scented plains of Africa. Under the gaze of the laughing stars, the old one sits, his kaross wrapped around his age-blotted shoulders, staring with rheumy eyes at the semicircle of eager, expectant faces before him. Faces of those who have taken but a few steps along the dark and uncertain footpath called life. Faces of the ones as yet oblivious to the pain of life's bitter scourges. Faces as yet unmarked by furrows of bitterness, ill health, and anger. The fresh, pure, open faces of children. The fire dances in the middle of the round clay fireplace, like a virgin reveling in the simple joy of being alive. It devours the dry twigs and logs that a little girl is constantly feeding it, leaving nothing but glowing ashes. It mocks the silent sky with a redly luminous column of smoke against its starry face, and by sending up short-lived stars of its own. Suddenly, the old one feels a great burden on his shoulders, a heavy responsibility towards the young ones sitting so expectantly around him. Suddenly, there's a visible sag to his thin, aged shoulders. He sighs, a harsh, rasping sound, and clears his throat, spitting and blowing his nose into the fire, as his father and his father's father had done before him. And he begins the story. The old, old story which he knows he must repeat exactly as he heard it so long ago, without changing, adding, or subtracting a single word. Indaba, my children. It is through these stories that we're able to reconstruct the past of the Bantu of Africa. It is through these stories that intertribal friendship or hatred was kept alive and burning, that the young were told who their ancestors were, who their enemies were, and who their friends were. In short, it is these stories that shaped Africa as we know it, years and years ago. True, the black man of Africa had no mighty scrolls on which to write the history of his land. True, the black tribes of Africa had no pyramids on which to carve the history of each and every crowned thief and tyrant who ruled them, on which to carve the history of every battle lost and won. But this they did and still do. There are men and women, preferably with black birthmarks on either the palms of their hands, with good memories and a great capacity to remember words and to repeat them exactly as they had heard them before. These people were told the history of the tribes under oath never to alter, add, or subtract any word. Anyone who so much as thought of changing any of the stories of his tribe that he had been told fell immediately under a high curse, which covered him, his children, and his children's children. These tribal storytellers were called guardians of Umlando, or tribal history. And I, Vusamazulu the outcast, am proud to be one of these. And here I shall tell these stories to you in the very words of the guardians who told them to me. Indaba, my children. So, what is really interesting about the prologue of this book that he wrote is the centrality of fire, because it is around the fire that Indaba is told, that the stories are told, that the stories which teach you about your history, the stories that teach you about your ancestry, the stories that teach you about where you came from and where you are going. The fire is the central place. And it is around the fires that stories of our existence are told, that cosmology is taught, that education about nature is explicated. It is around the fire that intergenerational knowledge transfer occurs. It is around the fire that family and humanity bonds. It is around the fire that the mind, the body, and the spirit are nourished. In a similar way, it is around the fire of the sun that our solar system, which is part of our galactic system, which is part of the universe, which is part of the cosmos, exists. Everything revolves around fire, or fire often forms a central point around which stories are told. But as I've said, the fire is crucial to cosmology. And when we speak about cosmology, we're speaking about the origin of the universe, the origin of where we come from. And so I'm just going to touch on one cosmology, because here in Africa, we have many, many cosmologies. We have many different accounts of creation, or different accounts of the origin of things. But when we look into them deeply, we realize that they're all speaking to the same thing. But I'm going to speak today from Central Africa, and I'm going to speak from the Bakongo people and Bakongo cosmology and how they explain creation. It says, the world was empty of all life in the beginning, and a fire force, Kalunga, emerged within this empty circle, or Mugi, and heated up its contents, which, when cooled, formed the earth. The Earth, the starting point of fire, is now a green planet because it has gone through 4 stages. The first is the emergence of the fire. The second is the red stage, where the planet is still burning and has not formed. The next is the gray stage, where the planet is cooling but has not produced life. These planets are naked, dry, and covered with dust. And finally is the green stage, when the planet is fully mature because it breathes and carries life. As part of the universal order, all planets must go through this process, but it starts from the nothingness into the fire. And so it's not surprising that an important characteristics of Bakongo cosmology is the fire that is in the sky, which is the sun and its movements. And according to this cosmology, the rising, the peaking, the setting, and the absence of the sun provides an essential pattern for life, not only in the cosmos, but also in society. So the 4 moments of the sun, that is the rising and the setting of the sun, that is dawn, noon, sunset, at midnight. These 4 moments equate with the 4 stages of our lives as humans, as persons. They equate to our conception, to our birth, to our maturity, and to our death eventually. That's the absence of the sun. And so, according to Bakongo cosmology, everything transitions through these stages, whether it is planets or plants or animals or people or societies or even ideas. And they actually have a cosmogram that demonstrates this, which is a vital cycle depicted by a circle with a cross inside. And basically, the meeting point of the 2 lines of the cross is the most powerful point where the person or the human resides. So the sun, as we look at this fire in the sky, actually tells us a lot about mirroring life in terms of birth, in terms of full adulthood, growing into adulthood, in terms of waning adulthood, or old age, and eventually death into rebirth. And so this fire in the sky, is important for us to understand this concept of rebirth, a rebirth being a renaissance, which is what then happens from the ashes, which I believe is what our proverb is talking about today. But as I've said before, whether it is any of the elements, anything in nature can have its positive and negative aspects. So fire, if we were to go anywhere closer to the sun, it would probably scorch us. And we know, and I'm sure we've all had the experience of a slight tinge into telling us what that big fire in the sky would feel like if it came upon our skins. I'm sure we've all been burnt by something somewhere along the way. So fire can burn, fire can scorch, fire can destroy. But in our prologue, Credomuta spoke about the forests. But what can fire do in a forest, actually, that is not just about burning, when it is done in a moderate, controlled way according to Indigenous principles? And we know that in the forest, fire can be incredibly beneficial. Fire can remove low growing underbush. It can clean the forest floor of debris and open it up to sunlight, the fire in the sky, therefore nourishing the soil. And therefore, reducing this competition for nutrients allows trees to grow healthier and stronger. Fire can clear wildlands of heavy brush, therefore leaving room for new grasses, new herbs, regenerated shrubs to provide food and habitat for many wildlife species. And incidentally, when a lot of thick strands of shrub are removed, we are able to increase water supply. And when we're able to increase water supply with fewer plants absorbing water, streams are fuller, and therefore it increases the water supply as well, the cycle of life. And so bringing in fire is actually able to bring forth water. It's actually able to get into a mediating aspect. But fire can also kill disease. It can kill diseases and and insects that prey on trees, and it can therefore provide valuable nutrients to enrich the soil. And fire can also bring forth new generations, and it can bring forth change. It's transformative, and eventually it can bring forth seeds for regeneration. So that is fire in the forest. Fire can actually either destroy it completely when it is done in a way that is not in line with nature or nature, but when it is done moderately in a way that follows indigenous principles, indigenous ecological principles, indigenous conservation principles, we may find that a fire is able to actually bring forth new life from that which has potentially been destroyed in the ashes. But now I'd like to talk from fire to ash, because this proverb speaks to us about ash. And for that, I'm coming onto our continent back here. And I'd like to speak about the East African Rift, which you probably know about coming from where you are, Simon. And this is one of the key sources of, for instance, the Congo River. And this African rift is a place where the Earth's tectonic forces are presently trying to create new plates by splitting apart old ones. And this rift is a fracture in the Earth's surface that widens over time. And I remember reading once in the news that suddenly a great rift appeared in a road in Kenya, in the middle of Kenya. I remember reading that, which is a result of these fractures that are happening with the tectonic plates. And this rift valley actually runs from the Gulf of Aden in Yemen all the way down south, towards Zimbabwe, where it splits the African plate into two unequal plates. So the continent actually has two parts. There's a Somali plate and there's a Nubian plate. And because of this constant movement, this complicated system of rift segments, there's a lot of volcanic activity in this area, which is constantly churning and periodically seeking to bring up that which boils in the core of the earth. And we know that actually the East African Rift is actually the largest seismically active rift system on Earth today. But what this tells us is also that the great African continent is actually very slowly, in a couple of tens of millions of years, splitting into two. In a couple of million years, the African continent, and as we know it, will not look the same because of this activity that is happening, where the fires of the earth are rising to meet the fire of the sun, the fire in the sky. And we might consider this to be a great wound of Africa. But while this is a deep fracturing of the African continent, can be seen as a terrifying wound, its turmoil, this turmoil of this volcanic and seismic activity actually gives rise to the vast freshwater resources in the Great Lakes region. It is these eruptions that bring to surface volcanic deposits and lava whose high mineral content results in some of the richest agricultural lands on the earth. So this fire, now not the fire from above, but this fire from below, which causes a lot of destruction and a lot of death, actually brings forth what volcanologists tell us is volcanic ash, which can actually be considered as medicine. Volcanic ash is a time release capsule. It is completely rich in nutrients. And so this fire therefore brings forth ash, and it brings forth ash which then becomes medicine, which takes us right back to our proverb and my basic premise, which tells us that actually at the end of the day there's nothing lost. And what this fire of our East African rift tells us is that from the depths of wounding lies the code to healing. And so we see this fire also in our bodies, this interplay between wounding and healing. And we see this correlation when our own internal fires from within rise when one has an infection. And this, we know, is part of the overall response of the body's immune system. And of course, when the body temperature rises because of an infection, we call this a fever. And these are called by chemicals called pyrogens, those that bring forth fire, which flow in the bloodstream, and they eventually move and make their way to the hypothalamus in the brain, which is in charge of regulating body temperature. And when they bind to certain receptors in the hypothalamus, our body temperature rises. And when our body temperature rises, it makes it the body less hospitable for pathogens, such as bacteria and viruses and so on. So fire in our bodies, just like the fire on the planet, is actually one of our protectors. It is our immunity. And it is for this reason that in our African wisdom, we find that because it is able to regenerate the forests, because it is seen in cosmology as being, one of that which comes forth from the nothingness, in the creation of all that is, because it is in our bodies, because it is so beneficial in that which comes forth from the sun. Because of this, we find that nature deifies fire. And in our African traditions, we find that fire then becomes personified, it becomes deified. It may be known as Herikuti or Ogun, Ongozi, the gods of fire, the warrior, the one who wields and hammers metal through extreme temperature, because that's what fire does. It's able to melt, the metal because of its extreme temperature. And with a slightly less temperature, he's also known as Heru. He's known as Shango. He's known as Umvelingani. He's the one who governs our will. And so when our fires raise within our being, we're then able to be one with the Supreme Being. And because of this, we know that fire can therefore be a source of initiation. And as just like in Indaba, my children, we've been told that the stories of creation and life are told around the fire. It is also around and through fire that initiation happens. And often the stories that are told around the fire are often coded. They are often masked, in order to mask deeper knowledge that becomes apparent to one who is raised through the fire and is able to come into comprehension. And when one is going through a certain level of initiation, the initiate must first acquire an extensive body of sacred and sometimes secret knowledge that is in line with either general rites of passage or in response to particular specialized callings. And often the elements are used in various forms and guises throughout the initiation. And when the initiate has been hammered like iron and eventually shown readiness, he or she is often put through the two of the dancing elements. One is purification by water, and then the final testing by fire. And, one, for instance, may be required to walk upon fire. One may be required or walk upon coals. One, like amongst our Batwa here, may be required to actually douse oneself, with the coals from a hot fire, or even ingest the coals, to show how their life force has been able to absorb, all that they have initiated into. In some instances, extremely hot oil is poured onto the initiate's hands or rubbed onto their body. And if they're truly initiated, it shouldn't leave any signs of burns. And this would be because one's inner life force, the inner fire, has risen to such a point that it is able to create a protective shield, around the burning. And once one is able to manage to master fire in this way, then they're ready to undertake their most noble function, which is to provide assistance and to and protection to others in their community. And so it is from fire that we rise from the ashes. And this rising from the ashes is not something that is unknown within our African spirituality. And this, if we come, let's go to Kemet or ancient Egypt, we know that this element, that is shown about rising from the ashes, may be known, was brought in bird form as what we call as Benu, the bird of Benu, which, it is that which rises, or that which rises in brilliance, or that which shines. And this was rendered into what we may modernly know as the phoenix. And the phoenix is that which rises from the ashes, that which, and interestingly enough, with the Benu, we know that Benu is closely associated with Atum, with Ra, with Oser, and flies over the waters of Nun, the primordial waters. So once again, always this interplay between the dance between the cosmos, and this is what brings forth creation. And so ultimately, the Benu bird was seen as the ultimate meaning of transformation. And once we know this ability to be in constant transformation, then it is a way to ensure our immortality, which is our oneness with divinity. And so, what does the Benu bird do, or the phoenix do? It rises from the ashes. And so, for me, this is what it tells us about this proverb: is that if nothing is left from the fire, eventually something will rise from the ashes. And this is our renaissance. This is our rebirth. This is our transformation. This is our regeneration. This is the potential for all of that to emerge. But if nothing is left to rise from the ashes, if we don't even have a phoenix or a Benu to rise from the ashes, just like volcanic ash, the ash itself is medicine. And what we know is that even if there's nothing in the ashes, even if everything has been taken to points of destruction, ash is incredibly useful. For instance, in the garden, ash is very high in potassium, calcium, and magnesium, which is essential for plant health. It is really good in ability to increase, the soil's pH. It is able to repel, slugs and insects, that may be influencing upon the plant health. It may be used to melt ice for those of you who live in icy countries. It may be used to remove stains, on stone and cement. It is a grease remover. Here, our Batwa people make ash bread. They make bread within the ash, because then it absorbs all these nutrients that come, from the ash. It may be used to boost compost. It may be used as fertilizer. It may be used, as an ant repellent. It may be used to protect beehives from ants. It may be, used to supplement chicken feed. It may be used to remove odors, to remove mold odors. It may be used as a cockroach repellent. It may be used as a smell absorber. So many things that we can actually use ash for, even if nothing rises from the ashes. So for me, this is how I have interpreted this proverb, that it speaks to me about the cycles of creation, the cycles of destruction, and ultimately the cycles of recreation. It speaks about not being trapped in the burning, but seeing beyond that which burns to that which is cleansed, renewed, restored, transformed, and that which holds the promise of regeneration. And so, in that, the phoenix rises from the ashes, Benu rises from the ashes, and while it may not feel like it, ultimately there is no loss.
Ultimately, there's no loss. Gogo Rutendo Ngara, you've really made me take so many notes. I was writing because usually when we are having these conversations with you, I'm always just listening. But today I was like, there are things that I always miss that I actually need to reference immediately, and also just remember, there's so much that you say that in just remembering, that alone is nourishing for me. I don't know how it is for those who are watching or those who are listening on Clubhouse, but this is really an incredible moment, and I hope you're all soaking it in. We've dissected this proverb from Mauritius. The proverb says, what you lose in the fire, you will find in ashes. And Gogo Rutendo Ngara, dissected this proverb for us, and, also spoke about what African spirituality, there's someone. Okay, I thought that we had someone unmuted on the stage, but it's a different sound. Anyhow, so I just want to say that I want you to be involved. If you're on the stage on Clubhouse, I want you to be involved. I want you to share the link to the live stream, to the Clubhouse room, and also if you're on YouTube, remember to subscribe to the channel and also share the link to the live stream that we are having right now. Now I want us to continue listening to Gogo Rutendo Ngara just for a moment, but we are going to give you all who are on stage time to also share with us your own perspectives. Remember, we will ask for you to share, your reflection on what Gogo is sharing with us right now, but also your own interpretation of this proverb. So, Gogo, one of the things that I know we already spoke about Credo Mutua, and you read an excerpt from End About My Children, which is his book. But also, when you are speaking about initiation and how initiates are taken through the dance between fire and water, or hot and cold. Over the last few days, I've been, I decided to go to YouTube University to really listen to, Credo Mutua and understand some of his is how he thinks, and I heard how he was initiated. He spoke about how he was initiated and how it was during the winter where he was inside a hut where there was fire in the hut, and he had to run out into the snow, and it's so incredible what he had to go through to become who he became. He was so multifaceted. So I want you to speak to a couple of things. One is being, for example, myself. I have so many things that I do that require different kinds of talents, and I can relate with Credo Mutua because of how many different things he did and how he was very proud of it, and a lot of the time, if you do so many things, you face a lot of criticism, or you lose a lot of opportunities because people who could give you those opportunities are saying you're already doing too much, but you yourself, that you have the capacity to do what you need to do. So I wanted you to speak to that a little, but also speak to, I don't see these kinds of initiations anymore, in the African community, both in Africa and here in the diaspora. And I feel that it's such an important part of growth that, could become present again. I think these kinds of initiations also deepen your understanding of nature, and currently, because of that lack of understanding or appreciation for what nature provides for us, we are destroying the earth, and even African people don't show the care for the earth that we could. and we have the most natural, portion of land. But because of the lack of appreciation for it, and because of the lack of appreciation of even our initiation processes, we are not stewards of the earth. So I wanted you to just speak to how we could, participate in initiations more, and also how, just your thoughts a little bit about, hot and cold, and why we should pay attention to some of the work that Credo Mutua did. And also I think that will lead us to you talking about the work that you do, and also with this foundation, and I think that's how we're going to transition from here.
Thank you so much, Simon. Yes, I think as you've mentioned, when we come into traditional African culture, initiation, or let me say rites of passage, were critical to developing one into, through the various stages of life. When I spoke about the Bakongo cosmology and how they speak about how the sun mirrors our stages, in terms of the human stages of life. And often each of those stages would be precipitated by a certain rite of passage that would capacitate you, give you the necessary knowledge that you need in order to be able to take on this new stage. But also build your stamina, bring you into the resonance with that which you're moving into. And so what we find that because a lot of those rights, through the loss that has come into our continent, have been lost, and therefore we find that we have old people that have not actually graduated to becoming adults, but they're grandparents, but they haven't gone through the rites of adulthood. They haven't gone through the rite of eldership. They haven't gone through all the various rites that would be needed. And as such, we find that society is a great victim of this inability to cultivate, because we are essentially cultivating the initiations, or the rites of passage are there to cultivate all those aspects of who and what we are. As you've said, you understand that you are multifaceted, and you have the capacity to express yourself in multiple dimensions in the same way that Baba Credo Mutwa did. And part of these rites of passage would be there to hone and to capacitate, that ability to tap into all those multifaceted aspects of who or what each and every one of us are, in line, of course, with one's destiny or life purpose or calling. But unfortunately, a lot of that has fallen away in terms of, as you say, in our general modern day life. Some still occur very much in the deep, in the deep rural areas in some parts of the continent. But for the most part, especially those of us who live an urban life, a lot of those have been removed. And as such, what we often find is that you therefore don't come into the mirroring of who you are, and what your capabilities are, and what your capabilities are in response to your destiny. Because part of what would be done through these initiations would be seeing, what is it that you came here to do? Why were you born at this time? And then you would be named according to your destiny. You'd be given your divine name, according to that which is your purpose, so that whenever this name is called, it animates and activates your purpose, your reason for being, the reason that you're walking upon this planet. And so this is what all of these initiations were. But ultimately, we remember, if we speak about Ntu and how Ntu manifests in all the various forms, it manifests in human form, it manifests in unreasoned form, it manifests in space, time, and all of that. In order for us to understand the fullness of who we are, we then have to go into the various phases of nature, which is why you'd be put through extreme tests in winter, and a lot of initiations take place in the extreme cold, so that you can allow yourself to go into that extremity. And then you're also put through the extremities of heat. You put through the extremities of water. You put through the extremities of all the elements, that you come into understanding that ultimately I am one with nature. And when I'm one with nature, I'm able to listen to, for instance, to the trees. I'm able to listen to the plants. And if I'm able to listen and speak their language, I am not going to behave in a manner that is, that is going to be destructive to that tree, to the soil, to the community, to the environment, and therefore to the planet. And therefore I'll be able to cultivate within me the ability to heal beyond my capability, and I'll be able to mirror others to be able to live according to their highest destiny. So yeah, I think we are finding new ways of creating. I know there are some great people. I know there's actually a professor I know in Kenya who has really been looking to how do we revive rites of passage, especially for teenagers, because we don't go through this movement from being a child to an adult, and so we have many children who are actually grandparents, but they haven't gone through the emotional, the mental, the spiritual graduations, even though their body has aged to an advanced age. And this is what many of these initiations would do. They're there to activate, to animate, and also to allow one to reverberate with in resonance with all of creation and all that is.
Wow, thank you so much. There's a lot of things I've noted down. First, I would love to connect with the professor from Kenya who is working on rites of passage for teenagers. I think that's something I would love to follow up with you on. But I listed the uses of ashes, as you were talking about ashes earlier. Grease removal, but two people make bread with it, fertilizer, protects beehives, cockroach repellent, and you listed maybe 20 things. These are just a few, and there are so many things you share with us that are gold, and somebody can write a book off of some of these things. Somebody can create a product off of these things. And this is why there is the value of sitting around a fire. Like, this conversation is really like the village fire. And there's so much that comes out of it. So I thank you. I want you to share with us, some of the current projects that you're working on, on your own as Gogo Rutendo Ngara, and also some of the work that you're doing with Credo Mutua's foundation, and really how we can support you, because we've had over 35 people who have been in and out of our Clubhouse room. We have 19 people listening there now, so a few of them are definitely interested in supporting. This is something every time we have you, people always ask me, how can we support? So I want to create space for that before we invite some comments and perspectives from the audience.
Thank you so much. Yes. So actually, I'm working within a network of networks in terms of different, organizations. All of them, most of them, really linked to how we bring forth our Indigenous knowledges, whether it is our African Indigenous knowledge or our global Indigenous knowledges, in order to meet and mitigate and mediate the challenges of our current times. And so with the Credo Mutua Foundation, that is specifically looking at what was the knowledge that this great polymath, this institution, because he was an institution, in so many ways, what was it that he coded through his almost 100 years of life, that he was giving us clues about in terms of how, to live life beyond this time that we're in, of pandemic and climate change and crumbling systems and war and violence and conflict and the ands continue. And so we're really looking to see how do we create systems of education around his knowledge, because he did so much. He was a polymath. He was an artist. He was a philosopher. He was an anthropologist. He was an environmentalist. He was so many things. So how do we create an institution that best represents everything that he sought to bring forth? But also, by the time he passed away, as happens with many such people, he actually didn't have rights to his works. you know and so to a lot of what he produced, whether it was his books or his paintings or whatever it is that he produced. So part of our work is to see how do we best ensure that his works are in the hands that allow for all for everything that he dedicated his life to be accessible, to be the inheritance of the youth or the children of the world. And how do we promote the spirituality that he came across with that? We also then work in tandem with another, organization called, Ancient Wisdom. We've got Ancient Wisdom Africa and Ancient Wisdom Foundation, which works with communities that are really at the forefront of preserving Indigenous knowledge or preserving the environment, that is associated with those particular communities, and especially some of the communities that are becoming extinct, like our Twa, Abattoir, our Bushmen, our Khoisan communities, who are slowly becoming extinct because they have just had all the ills of society from everybody impacted upon them. And so, trying to find ways in which to preserve that which we can, and protect and preserve and legitimize that which we can in terms of the knowledge that they have, but also how to, to uplift their communities, because a lot of them live in abject poverty, and not just abject poverty, but poverty that has bred also feels in terms of conflict, in terms of gender-based violence, in terms of dis-ease, in terms of limited education resources. A lot of the Batwa are in the desert, far away from anything that is able to promote livelihoods. And so we see how do we play a part in preserving the knowledge, but also allowing them, who are the custodians of this knowledge, to eke livelihoods worthy of themselves. We work with other organizations, the Earthrise, that is involved with protecting sacred sites from an Indigenous African perspective, and even other Indigenous peoples will tell us that sites, there are particular sites and nodes within our continent and our planet, which are sacred, and they actually keep things intact. They keep society intact, they keep economies intact, they keep, education intact, they keep the cosmos intact, and so we see how do we work towards the protection of some of the sacred sites, and also the custodians who are, protectors of those sacred sites, and the communities that are supporting those custodians. Something else that we're just starting with is also seeing how do we find Indigenous ways of promoting peace in conflict areas or conflict communities. So for instance, how do we use the brain entrainment that you get from drumming, in order to facilitate healing and to facilitate fractals of activity that bring about unity, and that bring about peace building. So these are just some of the projects that we're working with, just in some of the various organizations, seeing how we can actually pull together the Indigenous knowledges from around the world, which is one of the organizations that I'm involved with, in order to find what is the common thread, and what does that common thread tell us about the times that we're in, and the times that we're in, and how does that influence our activism, and how does that influence the alternatives that we'll find in order to make the world inheritable for the future generations. So this is some of the work that we do. A lot of it supporting Indigenous knowledge reclamation, validation, legitimization from the marginalizations it has received from our modern world.
Thank you so much, Gogo. So, is there a website where if someone is listening, they can actually go and donate that way they can actually put some energy into the work now or today. Is there any website out of the different organizations where someone who is listening or watching could go to?
Yes. So there's Ancient Wisdom, www.ancientwisdom.africa. Is one of the websites. And actually, let me just give you that one because eventually it links into the Credo Foundation as well. If one would like to dedicate, but one can also go to www.credomotofoundation.org.za as well, and you can just find a bit more information about the foundation there.
Perfect. Thank you again, Gogo. Today has been amazing, and I want to create space for everyone on the stage. Just briefly introduce yourself, where you're joining us from, and if you have any comment for Gogo. If you don't have any comment, we move to the next person, so that today we don't interpret the proverb. Today my request is you go to my Instagram and leave your interpretation of the proverb there, and I will personally respond to it, so that we can just hear briefly, your name, where you're joining us from, and whether you have any comment to Gogo, and then we just continue on that way. We can still finish within the hour. Thank you all so much. Lavender, I'll pass it to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Simon. I'm Lavender. I'm speaking from Nairobi, Kenya. Gogo, it's always amazing to see you. And thank you so much. Thank you so much. I wish we could have Gogo in the room more than once a week. Thank you, Simon. I'll just leave it at that. I'm grateful. Full up. Thank you so much again, Simon.
Thank you. Gogo is going to respond in a moment. Thank you again. Let's go to Crystal. Crystal, how are you? Briefly just share with us where you're joining us from and any comments to Gogo.
Hey, this is Crystal. I'm joining from Atlanta, Georgia today. Yeah, that was a beautiful reflection on fire and ashes, rebirth. I found that to be very beautiful. Right now, we're just giving comments on Gogo's Gogo's reflection on the proverb. Or did you
Yes.
say go to your Instagram? I'm sorry.
Yes. So later on, when you have time, just leave your interpretation for this proverb on my Instagram. That's where I posted the proverb, because we are recording this for the African Father in America podcast. I love it to end within the hour, so that it's within the podcasting limits. So I appreciate you all for understanding, but also I want to engage you on Instagram. So this is a good reason for you to check out my Instagram account, engage with me there, and we extend the village to that space. Thank you so much, Crystal. Debbie, how are you doing? I'll give you the mic.
I'm doing well, thank you. Greetings, everybody. This is Debbie Berlin, aka Game Dev Debbie from Maryland near DC. Thank you so much to the speaker and all participants. It inspired me to learn and to celebrate the phoenix and the value of fire. And it inspired me to write a poem, which I will look forward to sharing at another time. Thank you so much for this space.
Thank you so much, Debbie. I know I'll be hosting you as a guest very soon, so please, remember that you'll have space to share that very, very soon. Hey, Kay, I'll pass you the mic.
Hi, thank you, Gogo, for your words. They were so beautiful. They pretty much covered a lot of what I was thinking of even before and after, and led me in directions I wasn't expecting. I thought that was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kay. Hey, Brother Rushi, what are your perspectives?
Hey, thanks, Simon. Yeah, I'm calling from Seattle today, and I agree. I think Gogo summarized pretty much everything that can be said. A lot of things that I was thinking, and pretty much everything. She did a great job. I really did appreciate her interpretation of the proverb. I appreciate the time. Asante, thank you.
Karibu, karibu. Hi, Rebel. Welcome. Share with us where you are and maybe a brief comment to Gogo's time with us.
Hi, I am in from Atlanta, Georgia, and I just wanted to say what a beautiful reflection. This was a special treat. I just learned about Credo Mutua maybe about 2 months ago. So to come across this room and to receive the wisdom, particularly about the ash and the initiation, just reconnected me to his journey, beautiful pearls of wisdom, and it shows me how I can apply it to myself. So thank you for this space, and I'd love to support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rebel. Hey, Stella, share with us your thoughts briefly.
Hi everyone, this is Stella from Kenya, and just like every other speaker has said, I really appreciate Gogo. And earlier I was on YouTube, and at some point he said that fire keeps us warm. We gather around fire and we get the warmth, and I felt that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Fred. How are you? Share with us your perspectives, please.
Greetings to everybody. It's always a pleasure being part of the discussion and a privilege, actually. I think Gogo Ritanda has said a lot. She has passed on wisdom, which is invaluable. The proverb to me speaks of the transformation of form and energy. But the use of the word lost is not in a negative form, but passes across a sense of change, which is necessary. So what is lost, even though in one form cannot be applicable, in a different form is also applicable in many areas. So it reaffirms my strength and knowledge that whatever transformational process that I'm going through, or we are all going through, we can use that energy in a different state, in a different version to achieve what we actually want. Thanks a lot for the opportunity of being here again.
Thank you again, Fred, for joining us. Hey, Bibi, how are you doing? What are your perspectives, briefly?
Good morning. I hate that I missed so much, but fortunately, it's the replays are on, so I'll definitely go back and listen. And as far as the proverb goes today, I'll take it in my perspective as a woman that delivered all four of her children naturally. I would say compare. I'm just gonna go straight to the ring of fire in order to finally bring the baby to life. Every woman that delivers naturally has to go through that ring of fire, the crowning, where you go into this extreme, it's like the worst pain of pain. But the moment you pass that, there won't be any pain and the baby will be out. And the feeling is the most amazing feeling that you'll never forget. By that time when you hold your baby, the pain is all gone and you forget about all the pain. But in order to experience all that beauty, you have to go through that ring of fire. And just like the phoenix, I know I didn't hear it, but I know the story of the phoenix. It's like they have to go through fire to be reborn again, and that's why they say a woman is always reborn every time she has a baby. So I just wanted to share that in there today. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. Thank you again, Bibi, for your perspectives. Coco, how are you? And what are your perspectives on today's conversation? Do you have any comment to Gogo?
Um, okay. Good morning, Simon, and everyone in the room. I'm hailing from New York, and I'm your big cheerleader, Simon, and I always love the topics you bring. I wasn't here for the whole thing, but I know personally I've gone through some fires, and fire is supposed to bring ashes. And if you remain as ashes, then you won't get up and move through whatever it is that you've been through. So for me, when I'm going through these fires, I know that I have to stand tall, and it's a part of being refined. And I know that I will come out as pure gold on the other end. So that's what it means to me.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Fire is definitely transformative. It's a force for transformation. Just based on the entire conversation we had with Gogo Rutendo Ngara today, it's clear that without fire, life cannot be completed. There are certain processes that cannot happen in life. So I want to thank you all for making the time to join me for today's session of the Daily African Proverbs here in the African Father in America Club, for those who are on Clubhouse, and also for those who are on YouTube. Thank you for joining me. It really means a lot that you all take your time to come and support this concept of sharing an African proverb a day and sitting with it, sitting around the village fire and dissecting it, is something that is still new to me, and even though I've been presenting this for a little over 2 years, online, and since January 2021 here on Clubhouse, and maybe 8 months ago, we started live streaming on YouTube. It's not easy work. So your presence is deeply appreciated, and also the support from you, Lavender, Steve, and Stella. I truly appreciate that support. Those are, Stella, Lavender, and Steve are deeply involved with helping make this happen. And also, I want you all to join me again tomorrow. Tomorrow is the last day that we're doing this week, and we'll continue on next week with this amazing work that we do. We do have a couple of things that are going on that I want you to be aware of. Madaraka Festival is coming up. It's in Seattle on August 13th and 14th. You should check it out, madarakafestival.com, or you should tap in with Lavender and she'll be able to let you know more about it. With that, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, it's at the very top of the room on Clubhouse. You can tap in, subscribe, and support the work that way. Thank you all so much. Have a beautiful day if it's morning for you, and have a beautiful evening if it's evening for you. Peace and love.
African Father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Africa, tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze.
You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javanokelo, live from Seattle, Washington, USA.